What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today I'm going to be grading the top interior defensive linemen of the 2025 NFL Draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to join the community because this is only going to be continuing for every other position. Now, this is going to be how I am grading said positions. It's not just a ranking of 8 to 1. And you might be like, hey, Alex, there's a lot more defensive interiors than that. This is going to be a very common thing for the rest of the positions initially. What I want to do is be able to understand and study the players that you're going to be seeing on mock drafts, not the guys you're going to see in the seventh round mocks. I want to be able to study those initial guys, get out these draft grades to you right away based on all 22 tape. And then after that, which should only be a month or two, then we get into the deep dives where, just like the quarterback video where I did 25, technically 23 in the video, 2 in the description, that's when we do all of the deep dives. So these are all the players you're going to be seeing. This is the players I'm going to be giving a ton of commentary on, and then you're going to be able to hear about those sleepers, etc. So it's all going to be happening this summer. I just want to be able to make sure that you guys get good content early on rather than just us speaking out of our ass. But regardless, continuing on, this is how I grade the position. So in the top left corner, it is going to be based off of tiers, the roles that they'd play. Would they be the number one interior defensive lineman on a team? If yes, then they go into tier 1. And you guys get the picture moving on from there, like number 2. So, potentially probably a starter, but, a guy who's going to be like a fringe guy, rotational, definitely someone who could be that second guy on the team, developmental, someone who needs to take maybe a year, maybe 2 in order to become viable, and then practice squad / UDFA after that. So, yeah, there's only going to be 8 guys on here, but that allows me to be able to dig a little bit deeper into each of the players because it's fresh in my mind. I just finished watching a lot of these guys at work. I actually end up taking my work breaks to watch tape. Don't tell my company that, but it is what it is. Rather than, chatting it up and, kicking back and enjoying the Kool-Aid, I end up being able to make content for you guys. And so, continuing on how I grade the position, pass rush ability. This includes all the mechanics that come with it, overall pass rush efficiency, block shedding. Can you get off of blocks? This usually pertains to a lot of the technical aspects of pass rushing and run defense. It's essentially getting away from the blocker. Guys like, Byron Murphy, Jerzon, Johnny Newton. Those are some of the best block shedding defensive interior players I've ever seen. So they got graded very highly in that. This class has a nice fluctuation. It's not as skewed towards the top. Run defense, very similar to pass rush. It is your competency as a run defender. And, do you hold your ground? Do you actually stop the run? Do you actually have an issue with tackling? There's a lot of things that can certainly go into there. Impact of the line of scrimmage. Do they move you or do you move them? I've actually been a little bit more lenient on this grade during this draft cycle because a lot of the players that I'll discuss, vertically, they can hold their ground. But laterally, in terms of moving side to side, these guys get moved out of the way like it's nothing. Like these guys are straight up on ice skates. So I do have that concern. We'll talk about that in the video though. Get off. How's your first step? Do you engage really quickly? That matters a lot in an NFL that has passing game that's like under 3 seconds. It matters that you get close to the quarterback as soon as possible. Athleticism. This includes flexibility, top end speed, but something that you'll see a lot in here is actual athleticism in terms of conditioning. Do you have endurance? Can you last during the game? IQ, do you know what the hell's going on? And then length usage. Are you going to be bringing the guys up here up close? Or are you actually taking advantage of the fact that maybe some of these short-ass guards don't actually get to keep their hands on you? So that's going to be the position. Of course, it factor, if there is stuff like motor, off-field concerns, injury, etc., or just something I don't feel like my grading scale encapsulates, that's going to be graded there. Or it's going to be at least able to switch it up a little bit. And then dream fits, don't take those seriously. They're there for fun. But starting out at number 8, it is Dante Corleon. Somebody who slipped quite a bit since I first graded him. Of course, I have changed my grading scale, but he was up in the 70s range, and now he's in the 50s. I just don't really think that he's that great. And based on, watching him next to Jawan Briggs, who was a 7th round pick, by the way, Jawan Briggs schooled Dante Corleon. He switched his number to 2, and he was ass. Hate to say it, but it's true. Just overall, he was, unless the ball was running right at him, he didn't know where the ball was. That's the big issue for me. I had that issue with a lot of interior defensive linemen and a lot of defensive linemen nowadays as well. And I think it's one of the reasons they don't succeed at the next level is because it doesn't matter how good you are at getting off blocks. The only thing that matters is if you tackle the ball carrier. You don't know where the ball is, can't tackle the ball carrier. So I did see a lot of deficiencies there. At his size, I was actually very unimpressed with how he could penetrate the pocket compared to some other defensive interiors. Like that was his best ability, but overall wasn't a big fan. And when he was in the backfield, I did not see him have the speed, and he also seemed to get gassed quite easily, but he didn't have the athleticism to make up the ground in order to make some of those big plays. So very unfortunate, something I was really hoping to love a lot more. Now we're going to go on to Howard Cross the third. Debated putting Riley Mills in here as well, but I went primarily off of mock draft database's consensus board to see the rough range of guys who are considered top 100 prospects at the defensive tier position. And I end up tossing in a couple guys here that are, guys who I think deserve at least a fair shout. But Howard Cross is an extremely athletic talent. He's 284 though, which is a big issue to me. And there was this one run defense play. Like, he did a very good job overall. The thing with Howard is that he's super inconsistent, but there was this one play where he did a beautiful shed on, I believe it was the right guard, and he got face-to-face with the rusher. The rusher ran through his arm tackle. Now, I'm talking like they were face-to-face like this, like you and me right now, and he couldn't make the tackle. And I saw a lot of arm tackles. I did have a little bit of an issue with that, but, there were some very high-level plays in there. No doubt about it. He's a very good athlete, as he needs to be at that size. The problem is he's such a tweener. Like, you have to have him succeed in a Milton Williams role, which is why I ended up putting the Eagles on there, since Milton's going to be up for a contract. But, I also just didn't see him necessarily going full length the whole time. And when you are that short, I do expect you to try to get as much range in between you and the guy in front of you so you could see around him. He did that, but just not consistently enough. And that's what bothered me. But as you can see, it went from 55.5 up to 67. We're talking about a massive tier jump right here. And I can guarantee you, when we go into our deep dive where we'll have 20 to 25 interior defensive linemen, you will see that tier be filled up. So, very exciting for that. We're also just seeing, essentially, because these guys are considered, hey, first, second, third round prospects. Like, for me, where I'm projecting these guys is based off of where I actually think they'll end up, rather than, hey, the consensus says they're here. Because we're wrong every year at the beginning. I might as well grade them and then see, if they end up improving, how far they've also come. Now let's talk about Walter Nolan, transferred to Ole Miss. Relatively solid jersey swap. Shout out to the artist who did that. But, there's nothing of him in Ole Miss gear, which is intriguing. But, transferred out of Texas A&M, listed at 6'4", 290. By the way, do your own research. You guys can call me out because I didn't do this for every single one of these guys. I did it for like 90% of them. But go to the team's preseason or spring roster, and then you can end up seeing their actual weights, because there's certain guys like Tylor Williams, when you look at him, you're like, I don't believe that he's 290. He was 327. Walter looks like he's a solid 300, 310. He's still 290. So interesting. But, he moves very, very well. He actually could almost be a big edge rusher like DeMarvin Leal. But, there was just something about his game that got to me, and it was the inconsistency. For me at 290, I thought that he played the game well for a 300-pounder. And, he definitely covered up the fact that he was size deficient. It's why he has a -1 it factor. It's like, you're sub 300. You can't just be, in every single system as a pure D tackle, right? There's going to be these interior offensive linemen at the next level that certainly can handle themselves. So there definitely is that issue. But, Nolan, in terms of pushing the pocket, great athlete, has even some bend to him as well. But I did see a lot of times he was almost just like dancing around with the offensive lineman, wasn't actually making any progress. And like a lot of these, including I'll talk about Tylor Williams eventually, but a lot of these defensive systems want to confuse offensive linemen with stunts. And these defensive linemen just don't know how to run them properly, and they look kind of foolish while doing so. Happened quite a bit, but also I love Walter Nolan for his versatility. He played, like, even in the games where he was listed as a starter at defensive tackle, he played every single position. So that's definitely something that's admirable. Overall, really solid prospect. I do think he's a developmental guy, but, at the end of the day, there are some teams that are looking to bring on somebody who could be that size mismatch, maybe on the edge for some plays, or maybe that speed mismatch on the interior. Now let's talk about Dion Walker. RIP to the graphic, RIP to the Kentucky logo. That's one of my favorite things too. But, not everything's perfect. But Dion Walker out of Kentucky, He is an absolute behemoth, 6'6", 348 pounds. The issue with him is how tall he stands. And if you watch that Georgia game, it was a completely different player than who he was at the end of the year, which is why I actually gave him a 1+, is because I saw so much progression from him. I thought he was almost a UDFA product. If you study that Georgia game alone, which is by far his worst game, you look at the PFF grades, and yeah, PFF grade isn't everything, but it's a good reference. It looked like he was a UDFA grade. Like, just getting bowled over, backup guards toppling this dude. But he stands so tall, and he is so tall. Like, you need to keep a lower pad level. He ends up falling over a lot, and he has quick feet, but it doesn't really matter if your ass is on the ground. So Dion Walker, though, he does have some really quick block shed moves. I love that he is able to utilize the swim very well. That is something at his height he can do because his arms are naturally above some of these guys' shoulders. It's pretty easy for him to get over and past them, right? So at least there's a small benefit there to his height, but overall, I also thought with a lot of these a lot of these defensive interiors, he had success versus the run when the run came to him, not when he went to disrupt the run play. And again, I'm going to talk about that with even Mason Graham later on, but that was an issue that I was hoping not to have with this class, but I found. But continuing on, though, I mean, at 350 pounds, he pushes the pocket, but not as well as you think. Again, I think it's because of his pad level. It's something that could easily change. But he doesn't come with a ton of athleticism. He's really quick-footed, but not really in terms of actually, changing the distance from point A to point B. It's more so, I almost think of it as style points rather than actual effectiveness. But for his size, good enough get off. I just don't really think this guy's going to be chasing down Lamar Jackson anytime soon. And similar to what I was talking about with the run defense, how it has to come to him, I did see that as a big issue. I didn't really see him processing the play. And at 6'6", especially if he stands tall, he should be able to see where the ball is. So that was something that confused me quite a bit. And at that size, I saw some reps where he was able to use his full length versus these guys who essentially looked absolutely ineffective. I didn't know why he didn't more. He should have done it a lot more. But, there's certainly a ton of potential to be had there. Dion Walker, a very, very, very talented player. Someone with unlimited ceiling, but certainly an understood and represented floor through that Georgia game. Talk about the next guy, Kenneth Grant. Man, I love Kenneth Grant. This guy is a freak of nature. Talk about it. He did a spin move at 340 pounds that just sent the guard flying. I love it. It's on my Twitter, so feel free to go follow me there. Links are going to be on that link tree, so you guys can take full advantage of that. But this guy was genuinely one of the better pass rushers, and he's 340 pounds. But the big issue I had with Kenneth Grant, he could not hold his ground, and he did not transfer his energy. His impact line scrimmage was very bad for his size. And, I mean, even in general, I'm talking about Walter Nolan had a better push on the pocket, which was very surprising. But something I love about Kenneth Grant, you could see it in that photo, but you could really see it in the game. He has a real intensity to him. He is energetic. He's a guy who you'd want in your locker room. He's swinging his fists in the air. He's like pounding the table for his guys. Like, I love that energy. This guy gives it 100 every play. That's a big plus. And having that pass rush upside at 340 pounds, freaking awesome. Very rare to find. I think he needs to work on the intricacies of his game. It was only like 4 reps out of an entire set of like 40 where he actually got off the block. Not a fan of that. He also doesn't hold his ground. Not a fan of that. But the potential is undoubtedly there. And for his size, this guy is an absolute monstrosity. Easily one of the players who could end up being a top 10 pick if he works on the intricacies, maybe works on that first step and being able to transfer his energy into the interior offensive lineman. Now let's talk about the guys who I think could be roughly in that fringe interior defensive line conversation. So theoretically, Beyonc Alexander, if he did not have the concerns with, transferring from Georgia, basically there was a lot of bad blood there. There's Zion Log was essentially like, I'm not going to comment on it. And a lot of the guys certainly seemed to keep referencing how they loved how they continued bonding as the spring season went on. And then they were like ready and fully bonded by the spring game. And that's exactly when Beyonc Alexander transferred. Apparently there were rumors that he was going to transfer again, but he said those rumors were BS. That being said, it's noted that people don't have amazing things to say about him. And I also did see he sometimes gets gassed out. So that's why I ended up having that. But this dude, right from the get-go, insane pop in his hands. He pushes the pocket every play. My one issue with him, he doesn't get off the blocks. At least he pushes the pocket, affects the play, but you need to get off the blocks as well. I thought he didn't do that consistently enough. I did see him actually know exactly what the play was at all times. At 6'3", that's where you start being like, yeah, you should know exactly what's going on. You could see over the interior offensive lineman or at least past him really easily. But he did it every single time. I saw him even see quarterbacks scrambling before some other guys did. Big fan of his overall processing of the game. But amazing first step. He could even be an edge rusher. I just think that top speed was a little bit limited. Some people say he doesn't put in the work. Maybe that's empirical through the fact that he does look like he might not be as conditioned as he should be. But overall, someone who has sky-high ceiling. Obviously, he was supposed to be like the next Jalen Carter there at Georgia and ended up transferring to USC. So we'll see what happens with Bear, but, the talent pops off the screen. Now let's talk about Tylor Williams. This is somebody who I had a lot of faith in last year. I was a little bit underwhelmed with his overall game because, when you're watching the game, you don't exactly see the run play or the run defense as much as you see the pass rush, right? You're looking at the quarterback, then you see guys getting that pressure. But Tylor did a fantastic job in the majority of the game except the pass rush. Remember when I was talking about that stunt issue where they essentially just look like a fish out of water? They don't generate any pressure in the pocket, and it's essentially designed to just fool the interior offensive lineman. Well, that applies to Tylor. There was a lot of plays where I just saw him essentially hand fighting a tackle just for no reason. And he wasn't making any progress because he lost all forward momentum when he had to stop and then go back around. And he essentially had that momentum, but not towards the quarterback momentum. That was an issue, but that's Ohio State's scheme more than just him. But it still led to a pretty ineffective pass rush overall. Block shedding wise, I did love the upper arm strength in his upper torso. I love the fact that he could also anchor himself pretty well, even versus double teams. There were reps where I did see him get turned in the run game, and I'm really hoping that, he could end up shedding off guys like that. Trent Jones had a phenomenal day versus him, I will say that. But, Tylor did end up splitting a double team and making a good tackle for a very short gain. So technically a run stop versus Trent Jones as well as the right guard, which wasn't Zach Zinter at that moment. So, there's certainly a lot to love about Tylor Williams. He's the best run defender in the class of the interior defensive linemen that are at the top. But we'll definitely see as time progresses. But overall, Tylor is a very, very, very solid player. Again, there are some deficiencies in his game, but as an early down run stuffer, that's pretty freaking awesome to have. So I'd be very excited to see him on a team, especially if the, Bengals get to, at least get some size in that room. That'd be pretty damn awesome. Then we have the number one guy. It's Mason Graham. What did you expect? But you probably didn't expect that he didn't grade as a starter for me or an actual full-time leader of an interior defensive lineman room. And I didn't give him any minuses either. I could have easily done so. This guy, talk about someone who gets moved as well. He did not hold his ground remotely as well as I thought he would. And at 320 pounds, I don't know what these Michigan guys are doing. They're not learning how to transfer their energy from point A to point B. That to me certainly hurt because I wanted Mason Smith to be so much better. But he's up there at Jerzon Newton with not being able to be blocked. Doesn't mean he moves north after getting blocked. Sometimes I see some, as basically evasion sheds where he's trying to get away from a lineman rather than go through. And maybe that's the biggest story about Mason Graham is he doesn't always go through the offensive lineman. Same thing with Kenneth Grant. It's dude, go through them. I know that you want to get away from them, but get away by going through. It's something I really hope that they improve on. Again, can't really shit on Michigan because they won the championship, but these are the little things that maybe could have made them even more dominant, right? So, again, one of the best block shedders, though, this guy is essentially untouchable, and that's a big, big plus to have. Just very inconsistent in his run defense. His high-level plays, certainly there. Just didn't see it as much as I'd want for a number one interior defensive lineman. But it really is transferring that energy. It's another guy where the play had to go to him, and he's going to shut it down. Otherwise, he's probably going to be a non-factor. But, one of the guys who actually does utilize his full length as well, that's a big plus. But essentially, none of these guys really stood out to me as, guys I had to go and get. Tylor Williams probably is that one guy where if I'm there in the second round, I feel comfortable with my pass rush, and I just need somebody to keep an offense out of rhythm. That's a guy who I want to make sure that you stuff those early rundowns. But besides that, there's a lot more guys where you can have more creative freedom on what you want to do, but maybe not as early as what we thought. So on that note, thank you for watching. Love y'all. See you on the far side.